Good morning.
Morning.
I love how I'm good. I love how we have similar kind of attire in our morning episodes. You tend to have your striped kind of knitted sweater or like maybe something black and gray. And me, I'm always so fucking cold that the only sweaters I have are like like thick fleece kind of crew neck and then like a zip up fleece that I wear in the morning so I don't freeze to death.
Obviously, I'm not as observant because I didn't realize that, but that's interesting.
Oh, totally. I mean, when people start, when we get super well known and people start drawing images of us, they're gonna obviously look at what we have.
You're so cute. I love it. I
I
love
love you too. I love you too.
you. I would love if people would subscribe to our channel. Look,
And follow and share and refer people if they want to be on the show so we can at least say hello to them.
exactly. And we're always on Instagram at getting_juicy, like a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook at Getting Juicy, no underscore, and YouTube channel Getting Juicy with Rachel and Hero. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Yes, absolutely.
I was thinking this morning, I was thinking of like an icebreaker question for guests.
I think that would be great.
My icebreaker question is, are you wearing pants?
Yes.
Because, and I know maybe that's like, it's kind of an obvious question. I like how that's an obvious question to me. No, I think because everyone's doing Zoom, not everyone, but a lot of people, and we only really care about, either the chesticles and up
Yes, exactly. The
or
breastises.
the breastises. And then maybe we could do a segment of like, what's on your lap?
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Can we please start doing that?
Or like just with you and I.
Yes.
What's on your lap? Surprise, I've got a G.I. Joe on my lap. Or like, I don't know, just where I don't know where that came from.
Exactly.
Just random shit. But
Oh my God. I got some other ideas, but I'm not going to say them right now.
okay, I wonder if I should ask Jay if he's wearing pants. I think that's what I'll do.
Yes, we totally should save that for sure.
Yeah. So, with that being said, our guest this morning, middle of the night, whenever the hell you're going to listen to this or watch this, is Jay Rodriguez, not Jai, not Jai. That almost sounds like it could be an accent, Jai.
Yes.
Jay Rodriguez, who is the OG, the original freaking gangster of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, which
Yes.
was called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy because now it's just Queer Eye, and it's definitely opened up to include everybody, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I didn't look this up, but I can't recall when that was. Like, I remember watching them. Was it early 2000s? Was it?
Yeah, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy on Bravo. It was picked up by Bravo in the States. We can ask Jay specifically, but it ran for, I think, 5 seasons. And I think it started in 2004, 2005,
Okay.
or it might have ended. It was definitely in the 2000s. I just can't recall if it was on the earlier, the mid, or the late part of that decade.
See, and sometimes, like, instead of looking these things up, I like to ask our guests.
Yeah, exactly.
I could have looked it up. But he's also a phenomenal singer. He is a musical theater guy. He was in for a lack of a better word, traveling version of Rent. I don't know if it was international, if it was just North America. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to ask him about that too. He played one of my all-time favorite characters in that production, Angel, and singing one of my favorite songs, maybe of all time, of all musicals, honestly, called I'll Cover You. And I adore that song. And I want to actually tell him that my mother sang that song at my sister's wedding. Aww. For them, because my mom's a singer too. So anyway, it means a lot. That song does.
Yeah. Well, and also, first of all, I just want to thank Jay for saying hello back to us. And so, as I was kind of mentioning the on our last episode and our episode with Mary Lou Davis, Rachel and I have different skills and strengths and so forth. And one of my skills is outreach and connecting with people and bridging that gap from being anonymous to being, relatable, right? And so when I reached out to different people from different walks of life, different shows that I thought would be of inspiration. Queer Eye, of course, is one of the first ones I thought about. But I was actually also thinking about the original because that's what I started watching when I was a teenager with my mom, actually, which is great.
Awesome.
And so when I reached out to the Fab Five, Jay was one of them, the one to get back to me, and I was just so like. I don't care if who it was, but I was just so shocked and so humbled that somebody like him, who it must be so busy and established and doing everything that they could possibly do within the world of theater, culture, LGBTQ activism. You know, this guy that I've watched on other queer little series that came out after Queer Eye that I've seen him in. I forget some of the names, but
Okay.
it's just amazing.
Too. Yeah. Yeah. It is amazing. And
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you remembered to think about the original cast of that show because now we follow like Jonathan Van Ness and Caramo and, the rest.
Bobby and Anthony,
Just
all
gonna
of that.
say their names.
Yeah, exactly.
um,
And Tan.
oh, I love Tan. I love Tan. But I thank you for reminding me of the original because
Yeah.
it was groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking, and also I want to talk about that because they talk about again in the current series. You know, at first we were fighting for acceptance, now we're fighting for tolerance,
Ah, yes.
and that is huge.
Good.
And yeah, and they have had a couple reunions that they've had some interviews with the original and the current Fab Five, and so they've all made sure to carry on the torch in a way that really represents what the original Fab Five, including Jay Rodriguez, was part of starting in that
Yes.
era. You know, but
And
one thing,
was he the culture expert
yeah.
at the time?
Yeah, Jay was a culture guy, and
Yes.
also it's funny. I actually had the biggest crush on Kyan Douglas, and he was the hair guru.
Ah!
I had the hugest crush on him.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know what he looks like now.
Oh, he looks great.
It's funny. The person that I recall the most is Jay. And I think it's just because the musical thing and then seeing him,
Yeah.
he's in my all-time favorite scene of the movie of The Producers.
Yes.
So like there's just a familiarity there, I think, with his face, and he's so cute.
Oh my God, he's so cute. I mean, they're all adorable, and it's amazing to see how, again, it's a matter of what you make out of your time in different areas of development in your career that you've been spotlighted on, because it's really what you make of it after when you are done that part. And we know that as yoga teachers, as actors, like we're only as strong as our last class. We're only as strong as our last role.
That's true. Or not even that, but as memorable.
Yes, that too.
Right? Because people tend to have, when they have short extension. You know why I keep having trouble with my words? Again, it's the muffled ears. I'm just making excuses. It's the muffled of the headphones over my ears.
Yeah, you have too much muff on your ears. What are you doing?
Too much muff. I'm not sure what that is. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking of, okay, now you got me into a different tangent here, but Jay's also awesome at doing skit comedy or sketch comedy, which I was watching his Instagram live and he was doing it for charity over Christmas. I think it was just before Christmas. And I know Hero had to work, so he wasn't able to watch, but oh my God, the characters that he could do and come up with and just ad lib. And it's hilarious, but they're called the Hyman family. That's their last name. So anyway, the muff, the Hyman, that just all.
And one thing that's really great is that when Jay responded to me through our getting_Jewcy, follow us on Instagram, back on our channel, it was amazing because he said, hey, like, hello, like, so lovely to hear from you. Like,
Yeah, voice memo too.
Yeah, no big deal at all. Like, never too much to ask for. By the way, I have a huge closeness to Vancouver, BC, because that is where I was in rent, and that was actually in his words, like that was my city of residence of things like that. And so he actually has a big connection. And I think the combination of recognizing similar city, commonality and interest, and also, I mean, I find everyone on Queer Eye is completely down to earth. I think that's just an automatic staple. But there was a tone in Jay's voice where I was just thinking, like, oh my God, and here he comes.
And we're gushing about you.
Oh my God. Good morning.
Sound like the most horrifying light. I don't know why I'm blown out. I think if I can figure it out.
Well, I keep doing this with my lighting. I keep going like off, on, up, down.
Yeah, exactly.
window open, but this is the bounce back. It's not even like the sun coming this way. The sun's on the other direction, but I'm trying to figure it out.
I know, at least you got sun in wherever you are. I've got rain and gray and true typical Vancouver, which you know all too well.
Right.
It's freaking snowstorm right now. So I'm in I don't know, Jay. So Jay, I know you're familiar with Vancouver, but are you familiar with the Okanagan? Have you heard of the Okanagan?
Definitely have heard of the Okanagan only because of the Canadian friends that I had made from Rent, and they're still in Canada. So yeah.
Yeah. So we tend to get, it's kind of like wine country of BC, but we get like either sometimes -20, which it can be for only a week, But then in the summer,
you guys,
summer it can be like 36, 37 degrees.
Who can we call?
Yeah, exactly right. So
someone get someone on the horn about that. Yeah. Gotcha.
So how are you this morning?
I mean, it's such a bizarre time because I'm usually in Puerto Vallarta right now because there is like this great theatrical community that goes there for the holidays to entertain. It's kind of what in the summertime people go to a place called P-Town. It's in New England, and it's kind of like a beach community, very gay friendly. And in the winter, people go to Puerto Vallarta and they go to vacation, but we, the entertainers, will do we're kind of like Celine Dion. We test our things out of the country first. So we go to Mexico, workshop our one-person shows, whether it's a singing drag queen or someone like me, or comedians. We go there. We do residency for, I usually do 2-3 weeks, and then I come home. So that's where I normally am right now. So this is a very different thing to be home. I'm like, what do I do? What kind of pajamas will I wear on New Year's Eve? Like, it's a whole lot of things to decide.
It's a lot of things to decide, and it really changes the way that you prioritize your life and also prioritize yourself. Hey, I mean, talk about a huge revolution for many of us in this time of the year and this time of our life.
Well,
it's just, everything is just so different.
Oh, 100%. And we are recording now. I just thought I'd like to let our guests know that, just
a sense.
And we did do a little introduction to yourself when we were just calling you, the OG of Queer Eye, when it was Queer Eye for the straight guy.
I do have a hat that says OGQE on it that I should have worn.
It's okay. I was thinking of wearing like my men's heels. I'm like, nope, as a yoga teacher, my hips are going to blow out if I put them on. So I'm just going to wear my socks. I'm good.
Well, and we
need to do.
Yeah. We were trying to think of like icebreaker questions in the beginning of these chats now over Zoom. And I'm like, is it appropriate for me to ask, like, are you wearing pants? What's on your lap this morning? Like, what's going on below the waist? Like, that's...
I have a pacing dog below the waist who thinks that it's time to get walked. It's not. Yeah, I have the tendency of kind of staying in my bedroom to the last possible moment because I know once I leave, the dog starts spinning. But I do have pants on, got jeans on,
amazing,
and you'll periodically see a dog pacing.
I'm such a dog lover. I already saw the puck. I'm like, ah!
That's Rico.
Oh my god, so cute.
So I just have to like say that. I'll cover you. That song is probably one. So I grew up with musical theater parents, a very colorful, interesting household to grow up in. And that song was my sister and my favorite song that my mom actually sang it at my sister's wedding. Like it was, So just the whole connection with musical theater, like I'm just like, fuck, I cannot wait for live theater. So what's happening? You're in California, I think, right?
And what is considered the hot spot of the global pandemic here in the States. I am in Los Angeles County. It is a massive county. There are millions upon millions of people who live here. However, we are surging. We are at ICU 0 capacity. I think 8 to 10 people are diagnosed with COVID every minute. So it is a wild situation here. So I'm staying my ass indoors. You may see this holiday decor up through, I don't know, June. I feel like it's for me, it's been, in the beginning, it was a lot of panic because of, okay, most of my work involves crowds. And as some things popped up this year that kind of kept people like me afloat, moving into a new year, it's about, okay, how can I continue to have that kind of connection, that kind of um, connection with an audience that makes us both feel comforted. I'll tell you a funny story about Rent, because since you brought up, I'll cover you. In 2011, when 2001, when 9/11 happened, we were all nervous about our future as humans, but also about our job security on Broadway, because who the hell is going to come to New York City now? And that happened on a Tuesday, and we were all still very panicked and about everything. And then Wednesday we were dark, and Thursday we had to get back on stage. And the producers came to us at 7:15 and said, tonight there'll likely be more people on stage and backstage than there will be in the audience. Your job as entertainers has always been, historically, to uplift in times of chaos or in grief or in pain, and to help the audience escape, if not for anything than just those 2.5 hours, to find a little semblance of joy. So I've done that every single day. I go live on my verified Facebook page at 4:30 p.m. and on my Instagram at 5:30, and I start these global conversations, and it's been a great way to stay connected.
Well said.
Amazing.
Well said. And also because it can be one thing that I really like to stress in getting Jewcy, because I mean, a lot of the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you get interviewed or people or press and media ask questions, it can be very directed in certain angles and also sometimes forced upon you to answer certain things in certain ways. And we're not about that. We really care about the people that are behind the mask, about who they are as real people and not just what they do. And I find that's really important to stress, because how often do you get a chance to actually talk about what's important to you and who Jay Rodriguez is before any of this even happened? And so I'm
Part for the audience, because they're seeing me, and I made the commitment. I made it to go live every day, and now they expect it, and it's fantastic. But you're not going to get the showman every single day. You're going to get the person who's cranky. You're going to get the person who is having a real tough time that day. You're going to get a human, as opposed to someone you might have put on a pedestal. And I think that was kind of why folks kept coming back, was because there was a level of authenticity that I have to be authentic. I just think I owe that to myself and others during this time to humanize the experience, because I think we'll always remember and know 21, and certainly for us here in the United States, for all the political and civil unrest, and rightfully so. There's a lot to be mindful of when we reemerge, and I'm hoping to reemerge a better, stronger, more grounded human. But I'm also slightly petrified of a lot of people I don't ever want to see again because of their choices this year. And that's tricky too.
No, very true.
Interesting that you said that, because I've been reading articles recently and talking to even therapists and people about the fact that this is a year of lost friendships too. Lost friendships. There's a lot of combativeness going on with family members. Differing of opinions, things that are have maybe been very difficult to talk about and hadn't been talked about for many years. Things are coming out that haven't come out, which is, I think, it's very good, but it's also, people have to remember. The other thing is, I think people always use those really close friendships as their therapy, and now they're losing those people. And so, yes, mental health is a very important thing to talk about, but more than ever, because those people have lost some of their support network. So it's, so I feel like maybe what you're doing as well is kind of therapy for you too, right?
As I always say, it's a two-way street. And I thought in the beginning, it's just so cathartic for them to feel this connection, would feel like they're not alone with someone that they visually know. And I think when it began, I was probably a little bit more polished in my presentation, and making sure that everything was perfect, and lighting and and then now it's just a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more of me. But it's because, you said, felt a certain level of detachment from reality TV show host president, who is probably one of the most out loud and proud, bigoted people in U.S. history, certainly in recent U.S. history, and the divisive nature was just when you get on when you get on a set on TV show and the vibe is good, it's usually because number one on the call sheet, the biggest character in that piece in that show has set the tone that everyone follows. And unfortunately, we've had folks in government here in the States where even if you weren't politically active or politically minded, you're still being faced with how policy impacts you as a person suddenly, and people are hyper aware, hypersensitive. And if you imagine you only see what you click on, then your bubble becomes immensely small without understanding empathetic perspective of what someone else might have been fed, true or otherwise, or how tribal we have become and almost ushered into that way. So yeah, you're right. There is a disconnect. And I think a big part of me, I have this website called Jay's World. It was kind of like my answer to having an OnlyFans or like a Patreon. And I called it Jay's World because I wanted everyone to feel welcome and to be their most authentic self there. And the people who come to happy hour call themselves the Jaybirds. And it's,
Oh, cute.
so basically, I'm starting a cult, guys. I'm starting a cult. No,
Yeah.
I'm not. It's just. I think it's one of those things where when you don't have a place, and even if you do, it's been the same reasons that you said. I think people make a choice, and maybe they'll find a way to bridge that gap for maskless at some point. But for now, I think it's tricky.
Yeah.
It is for sure. And one thing I wanted to ask you as well, and first and foremost, before I forget, I mean, I'm sure you get this a lot from everybody, but I'm still going to say it. You know, like I'm 28, right? So I'm not that young, but kind of get
You're a spring chicken.
whatever. My point is I'm an old soul. My point is that like growing up watching, you know, Queer Eye and other shows that came out after it and kind of the LGBT scene and all that, it's pretty phenomenal to be able to experience that growing up, and you know, having someone like my mother expose that to me, and to look at these people that I thought I would never have a chance to talk to or have a chance to connect with, and for someone like yourself to respond back so humbly and authentically and vulnerably to say, yeah, you know what, I do want to actually have a bit of time to connect, really means a lot to Rachel for sure, but really means a lot to me, because these are people that are, if you're not authentic in how you represent yourself to the world, then how are you supposed to be authentic to how you represent yourself every day? And that's a perfect example of that. So first, thank you for all your work that you've done. I will be completely humble in saying I'm not as connected to the musical theater background. Rachel is really great at that, but I am definitely connected to reality TV and to LGBTQ people that have been role models and have really paved the way for people like myself and others in our community and our next generation, who have really made an impact in how people view the world, and hopefully view the world in a more authentic and sincere way. And I feel like you've done that a lot.
Oh, and Jay,
We just had a queer. Yeah.
say your sound keeps coming in and out. Yes.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, a lot better.
So much better.
Actually, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and if we have any tech issues to our listeners and our viewers, I am so sorry, but feel free to stop me whenever.
I just had to. I'm like, but I really want to hear every little word you're saying. So, thank you. Oh, but now we can't see you.
I was fixing and putting you on speaker. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a little bit about that, because we didn't set out to be queer-eyed, anything that would be groundbreaking. It was literally, I remember I was in an off-Broadway musical called Xana Don't, which was a 90-minute sort of neon pop rock musical that was set in a world where being gay was the norm and being straight was weird. And the high school students, because we're all in high school, decided to do a very controversial play on whether or not heterosexuals should be allowed in the military. And in the process, our leading lady and leading gentleman fall in love, and they turn to me, the magical matchmaker in the school, to figure out a way for them to go to prom. I cast a spell and the whole world accidentally shifts to being straight except for me. And that's what I was doing 8 shows a week when I went in for this little show that I don't think they gave me a title. All I remember was they said, you have to be openly gay. It's some kind of makeover show. And the references I think I had at that point were Trading Spaces, maybe. I think that was the only thing I could think of that was on TV that was in that space. So there was no point of reference. And I remember them saying, you're like crime fighting, but like against like bad fashion. And I was like, what? So, and I remember also they said that we're really looking for like an entertainer, a nightlife personality. And I was like, oh, great. On my one off night from theater, I headline at a club because, shocker, when you're doing off Broadway, I think we were making $400 a week, maybe. And imagine living on that in New York City, right? My bedroom, I had left a nice apartment because I had taken a 6 months leave of absence from rent, secure job, had been there 4 years, feeling great about my life, or 4.5 years, I think, at that point. And I go take an off-Broadway show, completely downsize my whole life. But you want to do that for the reviews, for the cast album, all the things an actor does. And then this little offer comes to audition for a makeover show that literally is almost titleless. They don't really give you much information. And on a cable station that, to be honest, had no real hits other than inside the actor's studio. So I thought, well, listen, even if it has the word queer in it, like no one's going to watch it. We all went in assuming this would be a little thing that we would do once and we would return back to our normal professions after. I mean, people took leaves from work. And then when the show became a global sensation, like 2 weeks after we aired, we tripled the ratings in Bravo history ever, and all that stuff started happening. Oprah and Ellen and The Tonight Show and all these people wanted us, and that we were doing the cover of Entertainment Weekly basically after our second week launching. They literally had to stop us and be like, just because we couldn't get a frame of reference of what the show had done. And they said, just so you know, this doesn't happen. Like, this is lightning in a bottle. This is a once in a lifetime situation. Like, this is not normal. And I remember, like, you know, because season 1, we barely made anything money wise. And I remember being, doing the press tour in LA and looking at my bank account. And I was like, this is really funny because I'm shooting the cover of magazines and I have like no money. And you hear this all the time, but it's true. And so I remember getting between seasons 1 and 2, I had to get like an advance, like a cash advance, because I didn't have any money, because we were traveling, promoting the show and put in situations where we're out of pocketing so many expenses. But that being said, it became a cultural phenomenon, I think, because we came into it with really no set agenda other than helping. And I think it bridged the gap and kind of, you know, growing up, I think gay men sometimes can fear straight men and vice versa for different reasons. And for whatever, you know, stereotypes they may have heard of or been taught. And this show kind of dispelled those myths and showed that we're all a lot more alike than we are different. And of course, you know, it was us in service of straight people. So I think the straight people felt it was for them. And the title of the show clearly laid out, it's for you. We did remove For the Straight Guy after season 1. So I think we'll always be remembered as Queer for the Straight Guy, but legitimately it was removed from everything after season 1. Season 2, that was when Queer Eye, no straight guy, like just Queer Eye for all kind of, that's when that sort of happened, which I think is a little known fact. But yeah, so that was my kind of experience in getting the show, and certainly my life changing forever. I had no concept of reality because it was the real world and things like that. Like, reality was very new as a genre. We were the first all-out gay cast in network history, and a global audience, over 190 countries, suddenly, from never knowing a gay person, welcomed Gay 5 into their most intimate spaces, their bedrooms, their living rooms, their kitchens, to watch us. You're in someone's home. It's not like they're paying to see you at a movie theater. So we were always like people's friends, you know?
I have to ask how, because it almost sounds like, for lack of better words, like overnight sensation. How was your psyche? Like, how did that affect?
Not great. I'll be honest, not great. I felt super successful and on my path. I'd done half a decade in theater, and I had, you know, I'd done a bunch of things. I booked my first commercial, and I had done like prior to Queer, like everything that I did, I was thriving in, and then suddenly to be a part of an ensemble piece that was not actor based. And Carson calls it the Wild Wild West. I mean, there was a moment my first day on set where I had a prop and I was about to bring it to camera to do a bit, and it got snatched out of my hand, and a co-star did a whole bit with my prop, and I was like, what? That's upstaging in theater. You don't do that. But these are not actors. These are real human beings and with real professions they didn't know. And while I remember that moment as a defining moment, it was just another day at the office for them. And so for me, I remember mentally having to cope with the hierarchy of what style, taste, and class, which were the kind of tenets of the show, meant to the other guys who are a decade older than me, and what those words meant to me being in my early 20s. And also, to be frank, I think they grew up in a level of, I think most of my guys grew up in a level of privilege that I didn't have. Oh. So I think I was looking at the job and the experience with a different lens. And I think that was part of the beauty of having me be a part of the show. But the critics were not kind. I mean, pretty much SNL and Mad TV are big parody comedy late night shows, parodied me as basically useless. Like Elijah Wood from Lord of the Rings, from The Hobbit, he was me on an episode of SNL. It was 17 years ago exactly, because it was the Christmas episode of SNL, and he they were all giving, the Queer guys give Santa a makeover, and my lesson was helping Santa learn how to do eye contact. And so we're like sitting in bed together doing eye contact, and then he's like, okay, I got it, is that it? And then he looks at camera and he's like, yep, because that's about all I ever do. And I was like, and then SNL, I think Mad TV had me depicted as we were making over Michael Jackson. And then they were, I was the last to enter the room. And then one of the guys was like, Jay, we're shooting in here. And then you never see me again. And so it wasn't like the kindest reception. There was also kind of, while there was a gay explosion, in television, queer spoke, L word, yes. Will and Grace. It was a very white explosion of mostly straight people playing gay people with a couple of queer folks peppered in. Yes. And certainly there weren't many people of color. While we celebrate people who I was inspired by as a teen now, it took them a long time. I'm referencing people like Billy Porter. Like I grew up listening to the Grease soundtrack, and if those of you who don't know, Billy Porter from Pose and Kinky Boots and all that has had a really long career in entertainment, but during the early 2000s, which would have been the prime time in the 2000s and stuff, he had this really dark period where no one would hire him because he was too black, too queer, too femme. And I definitely experienced a lot of those things where, I'm the only person in my cast to never get some massive endorsement deal, couldn't even get a book deal. Basically every other privilege that my cast members got, coming from the pedigree of entertainment I had behind me, those should have been open doors. And the boxes I checked for diversity today would be open doors, but then they were he's unmarketable. Like, what would we market? Is he Mexican? What kind of Mexican? It's like, no, none. It was a very tricky time. So we all left the show with very different experiences of that time, and we just reunited, and it was interesting to honor the legacy of the show, but also have a safe space to unpack how it impacted all of us differently.
Wow.
Yeah, no kidding. And again, you can see it. I mean, again, not from necessarily a true lens, but you can even just see it from the platforms that were built from those I can look through social media channels, right? And when I looked at your platform, I was actually, I wouldn't say, I mean, I was a neutral observation, right? But I'm thinking, like, I wonder what Jay is up to and what is he doing? And that is also something that made me feel more related to you in some ways, which is bizarre, but also maybe not so bizarre, because look at what's happening right now, right?
There's
right. And I think, for me, it's always been one of those things where I was never a fame chaser. I think when you are 18, I was the youngest person ever cast a leading role in Rent. I did that show for half a decade, and it really taught me it gave me a specific kind of work ethic. Theater people work very, very hard for very little credit. And then you get into television, and I was kissed with the magical famous wand for, in my opinion, doing very little. And I say that cumulatively, like all of us. It was just lightning in a bottle moment. There's no rhyme or reason. It's not like we were the best thing on television. We just happened to be in alignment and off the wings and standing on the shoulders of people like Ellen and Will and Grace, who had paved the way and Queer as Folk. We were just happened to be at the right time.
Time
And that's not to diminish what we accomplished, but but because of that, I think I've always just hustled really, really hard. And for a lot of us, we've had to work, twice as hard to be considered half as good in some spaces. And Billy Porter has this great thing he said recently, and I really feel this is true. He said, it's very rare that a trailblazer, or whatever you want to call someone, gets to reap the benefits of the trail that they forged. And he is right now, but a long time after. So I remember in the 90s, I think Grease soundtrack came out, and he wrote, the theme song for First Wives Club, and Celine Dion covered it, Love Is on the Way. And then he had all these Broadway hits, and it wasn't until Kinky Boots that people were like, oh yeah, Billy Porter. And as he tells it now, there was a time where he just couldn't work. And I know certainly on my end, I had that experience for sure, coming here and having to take Queer Eye off my resume and just presenting as an actor who had never done that show. And really, thank God there was some casting folks and executives like Ryan Murphy who looked past my reality show history and looked at the work.
Yes.
And and that changed things for me.
So I want to bring this back though, because this is something that we really hit home on. It's not a matter of what you do. It's a matter of who you are and how you show up as a person that day.
Yeah.
And, again, regardless of platform, again, I've said this on our show before, like Rachel and I are both yoga teachers, and I hustled my ass 7 days a week for the last 8 years and grabbing very little money for what I was doing. And yeah, I'm a white male, but no, I've got severe mental health conditions. I am gay. I'm Jewish. I never look at the world the way that people think I might look at it. And the moment people see my eye contact or the way that my mouth opens, they immediately write me off because they're like, okay, this person's way too intense. This person's way too transparent. This person can see right through me. They can see the insecurities. And then like, thinking, girl, no, I'm actually here to show you that you're beautiful and that this is a reflection of the work I've done on myself. Why are you judging me? I'm not judging you. And even from that route, I find the same thing happens in show business, and the same thing happens with how we get typecasted and we get sumptuous predicaments from people that think they know who we are when they haven't even given us the chance to pull the mask off of what they think we aren't even revealing.
Yeah. And to be honest, before social media, which we did not have during my Queer Eye, there was no platform. You could not show people who you were unless you were in front of them, unless you hired a publicist who got you the right opportunities. And that would still be beholden to an editor or a network to allow you to be to give them that platform. So now the platform is social media, but we didn't have that. So the mask was forced on me by some editor in an editing bay based on a week's of work that gets edited down to 43 minutes. And suddenly a opinion of me is crafted, because reality, you have to craft characters.
Correct.
And so everyone gets an archetype, and then they kind of just, direct you and produce you in a certain way. And to be honest, you kind of, and especially in a troupe, you form the characters that make sense in that unit, even in reality. Like I was always the young one, the wackier one who liked the brighter colors and the neon. And by the way, none of that's changed. The one who likes the glitter and all that kind of, that's always going to be me.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was really interesting to discover in September when we shot the reunion show, which will air next year. That to kind of see how much of ourselves were still very much in play 17 years later.
That's the core of who you are, though. That's your authenticity.
So, but do you think that because you were 18 when you did the first season? No.
Well, I was 18 in Rent.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And 23 in Queer Eye.
Okay.
Wow.
Because like still at 23, I mean, you were not a formed quote unquote adult. So I mean, age, it's like those were your formative years too, right? So
I think it was a lot of crashing and burning in real time. I think, certainly it wasn't helpful to also be considered the Puerto Rican Emily Post and have to, kind of reimagine etiquette for the 21st century and to be the mouthpiece of that. I opened myself up just by the type to criticism just on the title of the job. And by the way, that's also, I'm the third person in that slot. There was someone on the pilot. You did not, as the viewer, get shown the episodes sequentially as they were shot. There was a pilot that only Carson and Ted were in, our fashion and food guy, and the three of us were not even in the picture yet. And then when they recast the show for Bravo, they had all four of my guys and a different culture guy, Blair, who did 2 episodes. So, and then I did 97 after that. But I came into the job thinking, okay, well, the 2 men before me, you know what I mean, got that role got replaced twice. And I felt like, you know, it was really interesting. And this is something people don't know, how we would make Queer Eye was we would start every Monday morning in a boardroom with the producers who would present dossier style, a gentleman, photos of him and detailed, you know, description of deficits as per the producer, what they deemed to be a deficit in their lives via our category. But for culture, it was always like little, like no information. You know, it was like with the hair, you look at it, you like anyone off the screen, respect to, you know, fashion, same thing. You can look at someone and be like, oh my God, okay, I think they should, you know, we put them in, we'll go to J. Crew because they're on a budget, whatever it is. The house, same thing, food, easy. Culture, how do you culturalize someone, expose them to culture and have a prosperous for television, momentous moment that is physically tangible, because they always wanted me to physically do something. That's why you saw me giving a lot of things. They didn't want, like Karamo, because he's my successor on the new one.
Yes.
Because of his social worker background, he just has a lot of detailed conversations, and they allow the breadth and space for that. And that was not something that I could do because they wanted a physical takeaway moment. And I just remember going to work and carrying this anxiety. And to be honest, when we just shot the reunion, which kind of mirrors a Queer Eye episode a little bit, it felt like I was thinking about it the other day. There were moments where I was like, ooh, like the old anxieties came back. It's like sense memory recall when you're PTSD. In the same situation. Yeah. We did like a drive around in the same seating as we used to have, or at least I was in my same seat. Wow. And that was tricky because I was like, oh my God, like I felt the visceral anxiety and all the feelings came rushing back. And so, yeah, it was an interesting process, but yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
No,
but yeah.
Please, it's totally fine. But when you did this reunion, it was the 5 of you, correct? Like just the original.
It was the 5 of us. Yeah, it'll air. Well, they actually haven't told us. We played it, you know, in a world where COVID didn't exist. It wasn't mentioned. We weren't masked. We were isolated for 10 days prior, and then we had to get basically tested every 2 days leading up to it to make sure that there was no possibility. And then the crew was masked and they had shields on their faces as well, which was really interesting to work in that environment. And then you also, people should know there's a job title on sets now called the COVID enforcer, and they're basically like COVID police. They make sure people are not talking up close and personal, that when they yell cut, you put your mask right back on. They are there to wipe things down, to make sure, like, it is wild. Wow. But you feel super safe.
They're like Tom Cruise. Did you hear about his rant recently?
I was kind of here for it, and I'll tell you why. Because people often think about the Tom Cruises and like the people in front of the camera, but there are way more people behind the scenes, especially in the offices and the executives. And a lot of those people have a job because that production is in play and cannot work anywhere else. So the grips and the electricians, you know, all these folks whose professions, editors and camera folk, they're out of a job right now. And for a lot of them, it's tricky to pivot into another profession that could tide them over during this time. And so, you know, I get it. And I think the hard thing is this moment right now, the holiday season, and people, I think we started talking about the friendships burned. And I think for me, it's seeing how people have a lack of compassion for what might be someone else's experience with COVID. And you never know how it will affect someone, not just physically, emotionally, but also financially. And so I think Tom Cruise was my inner monologue, that I don't think I would say that way, but I'm also not a Tom Cruise. Yes. And, you know, so I don't know, but also, you know, this is the man who expresses himself very, emphatically at all times. Remember the Katie Holmes when he jumped on the couch on Oprah and he was like, I love her so much or whatever. So I don't know why we're surprised.
No. And honestly, like, I actually think he was totally valid in what he was saying. Maybe didn't express
Didn't come up.
the right way, but
That's right. Also, I'm like dying to know what they were doing exactly. Like, were they just like standing too close? Did they have their masks off? What were they doing exactly? You know,
I don't.
Curious.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I just want to go back for a second because I heard you say in an interview about coming out that apparently with Queer Eye, because you really didn't think maybe you know where I'm going with this, but
Yes, I think I do. Yeah.
You really didn't know, like, I mean, none of you guys knew how explosive it was going to be or how overnight of a success it was, but that were you completely out at that point or was the show?
I don't think I knew what that meant at such a young age because I was doing the Broadway thing. You're such in a habitual lifestyle. You do 8 shows a week. You're done with the show curtain comes down at 10:35. By the time you're leaving the theater, if you're lucky and you're fast, it's like a quarter to maybe 10 to 11 p.m. And then you're starving, but then you're also like wired, the adrenaline. So you go eat or you go home and eat, and you're not going to bed really till like 2. And then you get up at like, I don't know, like 11, 10 in the morning. You have a later day and then you go to the gym, run errands, and do it all over again. And I think that for me, I just lived in this bubble where those who knew I was gay knew. But I never had walked into rooms and had it, enter the room before me, because suddenly when you are on Queer Eye, you are the queer guy from Queer Eye. It doesn't get more gay than that. And so that was the first time that happened. And I knew that taking the job, part of what, didn't worry me was because no one watched Bravo. No one, relatively. It was a lesser known, lesser watched cable station, but it is under the NBC Universal umbrella here in the States, and it's which is a massive conglomerate, and they just did so much cross promotion. They put us on right after Will and Grace on network TV. And we held their ratings and increased it, and that was, I think, when we were considered a bona fide success. But coming out was tricky because I grew up in a home where my mom had me young. My dad left when I was 3. They were they were not married. And I basically was raised by my grandmother, and my mom and I shared a bedroom till I was 11. Like, we had twin beds on opposite sides of the room in a very small home. And, I think when I was 12, my mom was like, okay, wait a minute, like, he's getting too big for this setup. And, I think we moved in together, but realized that we didn't know each other. And my mom got very religious. And so we became evangelical, born again Christians. And so while kids were, doing sleepovers on the weekends or, playing video games, I had no TV, no secular music. If it wasn't for the glory of God, it was not allowed in the house. And I think that's really interesting in some ways because I can see where elements of my personality that lean toward empathy and compassion as a driving force come from probably that time. Yeah. But I think the harder thing was, it was also the years that I think I was coming of age and understanding that I had an attraction to men, but I don't think you really in that era had a visual depiction. We certainly didn't have images of men kissing. Internet was kind of new. It was like computers were for fancy people. And so like even at school, to download a picture of like a naked guy, please, took like 43 minutes to get to the nipple. I was like, oh my God, forget it. You know what I mean? So it wasn't something I even understood fully because I had no visual depictions, no one to talk to. I knew I had feelings, but I really thought at first it was that I was, and I really tried to convince myself as such that I was just wanting to be like the person, or, I would find this language that I could tell myself that, it made sense to me until I saw Rent. And I started, meeting theater people when I went to performing arts high school. And those kind of moments started defining me. And when I got Rent, it was very much like, I had to tell my mom I was going to be doing the show, playing a drag queen who dies of AIDS and or AIDS-related complications. And I could not, we didn't have the I'm gay. We had the you're playing this, so you must be, and we're going to assume you are. As I defended the character, defended the piece, defended the role, it was my backdoor, pardon the pun, way of coming out. Also owning something I had never tried. So I'm defending something with no experience, but knowing authentically I'm a queer man and something's not right. And so my first couple of years of doing Rent, that's really when I came into my own. But at the same time, my mom was spending her time in church, and people would be like, oh, we heard your son's in the city. We were praying for him. Yeah, please keep him in your prayers. And then when Queer Eye hit, and the world, even at church, was like, oh my God, we saw your son on TV, the magic of TV. All of a sudden it went from pray for him to, well, yeah, you know me. I told him everything he knows. You know how I am. You know, I'm fabulous like that. Yeah. What do you think he gets it from? So it went from deep shame, which I thought was religious based, to understanding, oh, it's cultural. Like, you were nervous about how people would see you as a parent of a gay person. And that was what I was sort of dealing with. And we never recovered. Like, we never, you know, all these years later, I don't even speak to my mother. And we had some pockets of trying to connect, but unfortunately the relationship was never formed as mother and son. But it's always fascinating for people, because when you are a trailblazer or you are in a category of queer icons, that's not the narrative that people are expecting. And I think part of why I hid it for so long was the shame around it. You know, I think I even just did the Rookie on ABC here in the States earlier this year. And Nathan Fillion, who's the lead in that show, was like, oh my God, your parents must be so proud. And I am, and he asked, he said, well, you know, where are they now? And I was like, and I lied. Like, my knee-jerk response at 40 was to be dishonest versus telling a stranger who I admire in the industry that,
wow,
you know, my dad left, I don't know him, and my mother is wildly unsupportive of who I am. So but you know, there's a level of shame that comes with that. And so, but it's expected. People assume if you're on television or if you've had any kind of success that you would come from a supportive background. And I always say that the success is bred out of the lack of support for me. It made me want to try harder. And also, it's the hustler. Like, I know nobody's coming to rescue me. Like, I have to make sure I'm handling things for myself.
You put that perfectly well, because again, like, everything that we go through is a reflection of what we've had to face. And when we understand the judgment, the discretion, the bigotry, or the lack of acceptance, the lack of love, it can go one of two ways. We either don't know how to receive love, so we can't receive it from others. We provide love to others, but we can't receive it. Or we provide love to others, and then eventually, at some point, we may be able and eventually will receive it, right? And that's the perfect example of that. So, and again, I want to commend you, regardless if you've shared this in the way you shared it with other people or not. I want to just commend you that you just opened up to two strangers that, you know, that you could just share that, because that's what we.
Yeah, I think we come from different. I think it's important to acknowledge, especially during the holidays, which can be very tricky, that we all have different family structures, and that families can often be a family of choice. And that, you know, while many believe blood is thicker than water, I think it's the family is defined for me as the people who show up for you when they show up for you. Yeah. And that, I think, is who I deem family. And I think that during this time, I think it's one of the hardest times to kind of unpack that for folks, especially, thank God dating's not an option, but I didn't have to, I dodged that this year, but yeah, it's always awkward at someone's house. Like, so what do your parents do? Or, you know, oh God, your parents must be missing you. You're here with us during the holidays. What are they up to? And you're like,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with whom you have become, because to hear that story, and it just makes me think, like, who were your role models then? I mean, I'm just really impressed how humble that you've become, this man who is authentic, who is genuine, who is, like Hero said, opening up to strangers, where you don't just learn those things. I mean, or you could. Yeah. Your family.
I think the Rent, I want to attribute the Rent cast probably, because I came in and again I was young, I was super young and naive, and so many people took a liking to me because I was quick-witted and funny, but they also very respectfully, in hindsight now, kind of guided me and helped me become an adult and understand what appropriate behavior is and what's inappropriate, and how to navigate being a professional but also a good human. And I think that that balance, and I'm thinking the folks I'm thinking of are, usually the understudies who I hung out with all the time, because the original came back, and I was, from playing Angel, I was demoted to swing and had to cover all these different roles. So you're hanging out backstage if you're not on. And we bonded. We called ourselves the Mofos. And but it was like Karen Olivo, who won the Tony for playing Anita in West Side Story, and she is in Moulin Rouge. She's Satine when they reopen. And they have Shayna Steele, who's like a famous jazz singer, and she sings backup for Kelly Clarkson occasionally, but her husband's Kelly's MD, and she's a massive jazz singer. And then people like just a lot of Broadway giants who kind of took me under their wing and were like, "Oh, little boy, we're gonna teach it." And I think that helped, because when Queer Eye came, there was no way to get too big for my britches. There just was not a way, because they would have smacked that right out of me.
Right.
It wasn't an option.
Right.
So when did you make your move from New York to Los Angeles? Like, that's
So here's a little shady tea. We had some episode order. I can't remember what it was. It might have been like 23 episodes for the last season of Queer that we shot, but we didn't know it was the final season. And then in the spring, we were supposed to end, I think, in like August. And in the spring, they were like, "Oh, we're actually going to reduce the order to like 20." And then when we did the math, we realized they would end on episode 100, which means they could then syndicate the show, which quite simply means they could package it, stop making it, and sell it to someone else and just wipe their hands of it. So we knew. And so that happened. And I think I broke out in hives, and I thought I was allergic to something, but I knew that my job was coming to an end, and I didn't see a path forward in New York, because it's really tricky for beige, specifically, Latin folks. Broadway is traditionally very white, and if they add diversity, it tends to be someone who's Black, which is fantastic, but we need even better representation there. So I just didn't think that I'd be able to support myself. So I remember getting an offer to come to Los Angeles to do a TV show for 2 months. It was called Celebrity Duets. It's basically, the premise is kind of like Dancing with the Stars format, where the celebrities, people like me that you recognize from something, gymnasts, TV personalities, actors, we get partnered with a new music icon every week, and we're competing with a live audience, and the America votes, blah, blah, blah. And I started doing that while living here. Mind you, I'm living in a hotel. I do not have a driver's license, so they're sending a car, because I'm from New York and I didn't have a driver's license. And so then I just loved it, and I felt like this might be your chance. And I had some money in the bank, and I thought, if you're going to make a change in your life, and you want to really pursue television as a career path, and you don't think it's going to be theater, now's the moment. So I literally hired a company that goes to your apartment and boxes everything up without you there and drives it cross country.
Wow.
And I remember it being like probably one of the biggest expenses I probably ever just paid flat. And but it was worth it, because I knew that if I had gone back, I wouldn't have the courage to make such a bold decision to come here. And I made that choice 14 years ago. Wow. And I remember when the show was over, my things weren't even here yet. And I remember, walking to find for rent signs, like lease signs for an apartment. The first one I saw, I took, because it was close to the hotel. And I basically got an air mattress and slept on the floor with my luggage, waiting for my things to be shipped. And it was remarkable, because I feel like my life has always been like a succession of lessons in humility. And that perfectly balances out the sparkle that sometimes can come from the industry. Yeah. And it keeps things in balance. So I've been here 14 years, and I think it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made.
Congratulations to making that the boldness to make that move, because transitions, I mean, again, like we have major anxiety, but like major transitions, anticipation for me are my main forms of anxiety. And I therefore don't travel a lot, though I've traveled quite a bit, given that being said. So for
Mhm.
someone like yourself to pick up and to move and to trust the universe, to know that this is what I'm meant to be doing right now, and I know it's going to be okay, or maybe I don't
Yeah.
know it's going to be okay, but I'm going to.
That's the funny thing. I didn't really know, and I was really scared a while because I didn't. I had a very privileged performer path. I had 5 years in Rent, and they would let me leave and come back and build my resume and do a play at Lincoln Center and do a movie and a soap, and they just would always have me back. So
Wow.
I had a place to go and call home. And then Queer Eye, cultural phenomenon. We worked for 3 years pretty much consistently with no big time off. We had such a large order every year that I think the new Queer Eye shoots for like 3 months out of the year, and then they can go have a life. We did
Right.
not have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's a different setup. But so when I moved here, I really didn't have a good understanding of who I was. I remember I did like an at home in their closet kind of photo shoot for a celebrity magazine. There was like Us Weekly or something,
Hmm.
and they send a stylist to kind of redress your space to make it look cool. And she said, it's funny. I literally like feel like I don't know who you are because all your wardrobe, it could be like, it feels like costumes. And she was right, because I basically wore different articles of clothing when I was expected to be a different kind of Jay needed for that moment. And I hadn't been allowed to ever make decisions about my own hair, my facial hair, tattoos, piercings. You can't. Your body is governed by the producers, and you need to
Right.
ask for consent to change your look.
Yeah.
So when I first moved here, it was a journey of self-discovery. That obviously we're always evolving, but I think that was like the biggest shift of like discovering who I am, who I want to be, and
Yeah.
how I want to move through the world.
What's your, I have to ask this before I forget. What is your connection with Vancouver again?
I was gonna ask
Yeah,
the
so
same thing.
I was in the original Canadian cast of Rent first before Broadway. They basically hired me in New York, and they knew they were opening a production in Toronto at the Royal Alex Theatre, and I did not know when I was auditioning that I would be going there, but they offered me the role of Angel or an understudy on Broadway, and I thought I'd rather go play the role, create this role in another company. I thought also too there might be a cast album. There wasn't, but we got basically all the same fame that the Broadway company did. I mean, it was massive amounts of people. You couldn't get a ticket. It was, people sleeping in the streets. It was that era of to get tickets for the show, the rush tickets. And, we were on the cover of like the Daily Mail and everything. I mean, it was, the Sun, and, it was your proper celebrities in this country. And it was cool. We did Dee Dee Petty and like, this kind of fun stuff. And then we ended up touring, after Toronto. We did Toronto for 9 months. We did Ottawa at the National Arts Center for a month. And then we played the Vogue Theatre in Vancouver
I
for
live around the
final.
corner. I'm literally around the corner for the Vogue. That's where my apartment
I know
is.
exactly where you live then. Because I just shot, like a couple years ago, I shot The Magicians, which is a magical, it's like Harry Potter for adults. But I shot that in Vancouver as well. So I got to go back to the Vogue and just be like, here we are again. Yeah.
Oh my
cool.
God.
I love the Vogue.
Wow.
Great theater.
Mm-hmm.
But what a small world, right? That's the thing that you realize, is that degrees of separation, we're also not that far apart. And also the more vulnerable, authentic, and sincere you are to open up to somebody, we're just people. That's what I love seeing on the show. We're just people. And so when people say they get starstruck, when people say they get that, I get it. I feel that way, but I don't feel that it's necessary, because people want to be seen for who they are, not what they do.
Yeah.
Or not
And
what
what's so
they've done.
funny? I eat my own words because I don't hate, but like I always feel uncomfortable when people can't see me when they meet me and they're overwhelmed. And yet, put a musical theater star in front of me, put someone I don't even know who just did a great gig at a jazz club in front of me, and I get to be like, I get tongue tied, and I'm like, oh, look at you, like getting a little fangirly. Like it's fascinating when it happens to me, and it's usually not a celebrity. It's usually someone who is just immensely talented. So it could be like, like you go to see a Broadway show and the understudy's on, and then they completely kill it, and you're like, oh my God, you're amazing. I have to meet you. Who are you? And you were like an understudy. Like and my mind starts working and imposing their whole backstory, and then fought for this role.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've got an uncle that lives in Stuttgart in Germany, and he was the director of the ballet company in Stuttgart for like 20 years. So like the top tier, like the most amazing caliber dancers you can ever imagine. And my husband and I actually were lucky enough when we went there a couple of years ago, we were able to go to rehearsal and watch them rehearse. And that's, I know those moments because it's the talent. It's something that's like, you can't even explain where it comes from. And it's really, when it's genuine and it's not like coming from a place of arrogancy,
especially when it's raw like that, when you know that someone's put in the work, and not to take anything away from the people who put in work, but also have a machine behind them, that the hair, makeup, the lighting, the editing, everything to amplify what's already there. But when I see talent in its most raw form and it's sensational and doesn't need the bells and whistles, that's when I get a little tongue-tied and starstruck, usually because I know what it takes to create imaging and move moments in cinema and television that feel one way. And I know how janky it was to put together, and it was like a 2x4 with like, nothing behind it. And, in my mind, I know what magic has to be done. So when you remove all the magic and it's just the talent, that's, I think, the only time in my life that I really get starstruck.
And that's my point, though, is that, again, when you see someone for who they are and nothing is on them. And again, I bring it back to yoga because in some ways it's exactly the same, because it doesn't matter what the modality is, it's still the person. When you go to a yoga class and you see someone on stage as the performer of the class, if that's their way of teaching, which it's not for mine, I show up the way I am and that's it, and you get it. You don't like it, then fuck off, no problem. But then you see them out of the studio and they're like, oh no, I don't want to talk to you, oh no, I've got my own complexes. I'm thinking, I don't have any relationship to you. And it's the same with acting and show business, anything where there's a sense of the spotlight's on you. And then when you're out of the spotlight, you're a ghost. And I'm just like, I feel for people. I genuinely feel compassion for people that have to hide behind something to get by and to also relate and to feel that they have a sense of purpose. But if you can't translate that from a one-to-one perspective or even a little bit, how are we supposed to actually understand who you are? Because then you're
and
just
a lot of people, I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of people need and or utilize a certain persona or a character that they've helped create. And I think that for me, that may be part of why some people use phrase old school expressions like, oh, they sold out, like, peddling merch that that they don't use or believe in, and certainly before Instagram culture, a lot of celebrities were doing things like that, or just taking on projects where they felt they were doing it for the check. And I'm sure we've all, probably, if I look back at my history, I'm sure I've done something like that too. But I like to believe that I've been fortunate, and the kind of shows that I've been able to be a part of, like whether it's the series I have out now called Equal on HBO Max, which documents unsung queer heroes of the 60s, and I play Jose Sardia, the first out gay person to run for office, did not get the nomination, but the idea of getting these kind of momentous roles that have a level of importance to me as a human, I think kind of keep me grounded and keep me connected to being able to when it's time to talk about them, I can also really bring my own life experiences of who I am as a person, as opposed to talk about things from I call it the Jay Rodriguez hat. Like there's some, when you do morning talk shows, a great reference, morning radio, where they want all like the da 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 da, and they want the song and dance. And certainly you can, there's a time and place, absolutely. But what I love is the more authentic, peel back the layer of the onion kind of conversations,
right,
like the one we had today.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that actually just leads me into, because you're talking about something you're just recently doing. So let's bring it to today. What are
this is really weird to talk about, but I was like, this year, if I look at it on paper in terms of my workplace, I mean, I got this great guest star on a series here called The Rookie. I'm pretty sure it airs in Canada as well.
It does, yeah.
Okay, cool. So check your local listing. The episode's called The Overnight, and it did really well. And then I also did Family Feud this year, my cast of Queer Eye versus the New Kids.
I watched it. I loved it.
They were cute, but I was glad to win.
Yeah, duh. Obviously, OG for the win. Yeah.
And then I did right before this is all before the world shut down. And then I did HBO Max's new series Equal, which features a lot of familiar faces from television that are out, LGBTQ plus performers playing real people from the 1960s who never really got their story told.
Wow.
And so I play one of those individuals, lucky to do that. And then I became the first host of a major award show when I hosted the daytime Emmys this year, because I have an Emmy. And so I was the first virtual host to host one of those shows. I was the guinea pig. And so that was fun this summer. And then the Queer Eye reunion. And then I just did a roundtable show, kind of like, you know, a pop culture, The View, or any one of those shows where you're all in there. And I'm sort of the moderator. And it's called The Social Bubble, and it'll be out next year. And so I'm really, I've had a couple of, well, it's a pilot, so we're hoping that it'll be out next year. But
Right.
I've had a couple really fun things, but like many other gig workers, it's like, okay, wow, there's nothing on the docket right now. And so we are all in a space of leaning into our passion projects. And for me, it's my website, which is called Jay's World, and you know, kind of continuing my Queer Eye tradition of how-to guides and behind the scenes stuff on my life. And then also a podcast. I call it the Poppy Rodriguez podcast, which is, I guess, kind of like my sexy alter ego. I'm Poppy Rodriguez, like, you know, New York City.
Right.
And then, and all that to say that, you know, I think, I used to think it was or like you do one thing or another. Certainly when I moved here, it was like, you need to pick what you want to be. And now I'm just like, paint with every freaking color on your kit, you know, do all the things that you want to do. And because when I moved here, people were like, you're a host, you're a reality star, you're never going to be able to act. And thank God, you know, other people didn't believe that and gave the work a chance. And so I have been really enjoying this ability to connect virtually and to go live every day on my Facebook. And I've even developed some characters. I did a sketch comedy day because Jay likes a wig. And I do these lovely ladies of Long Island, I call them. And we have, there's three of them. There's the matriarch of the bunch. Her name is Gloria Hyman, and she owns nail salons on Long Island. And then her daughter is, she's Puerto Rican and Italian, and she's a wannabe J-Lo. So she's a little bit more urban, you know, she's more like that. And then you have Gloria's sister, which is Teresa Hyman, who's unfortunately a psychic medium and from Long Island with the first name Teresa. And she did go to school with Caputo, and they are rivals. And she hates that this woman took her career, but she still works in the mall kiosk and can tell you what's going to happen in your life. And so the three of them come on live probably like once a month. And I usually do like a charity fundraiser. So I'll put like a Venmo or a PayPal for a charity. And this year we did one for Thanksgiving and Christmas for Project Angel Food, which delivers meals to folks who can't access food. And that's just not during the pandemic. I mean, just always they do that.
Yeah.
And we raised a good amount of money, you know, thousands of dollars for these great causes. And if, you know, being silly and putting on a wig and making people laugh and feel less alone is my calling right now, then I think it's one that feels right for me.
Well, it sure helped me because I was watching your special with the Hyman. I was doing a puzzle. I'm like really into puzzles right now. It kind of like my anxiety. So I was doing a puzzle on my dining room table, and I was watching you, and it was fabulous. So
I know I was so frustrated when he's like, "Hey, come check it out," and I was like, "Yeah," and I'm in retail selling pants. And I'm like, yep, back to resale from not teaching full time. And I'm like, sorry, Jay. Rachel will take a look at it, and I'll see.
No worries. No worries. It's on the gram if you ever want to, scroll back.
Oh, I so will. But one thing I also want to say, as we start to wind it down for today, is again, in terms of your life, and again, you open up about your life a little bit, but is there anything that you want to share with us, your viewers, and when we do put this out, that you want to share anything from the heart, like from the soul, from the crevices? I think I want to encourage people to start talking. And I think this year was obviously a time of self-reflection, and to, for many of us, kind of prioritizing what we deem important and how we want to move through the world, and our values, what we value, and what we've maybe taken for granted. But I think coupled with that, I think there was also a silence about a lot of things that were just unjust. And I think it's a lack of confidence in folks being
too nervous to speak because they don't want to say the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as we navigate a path forward, whether it's speaking about LGBTQ issues as an ally or standing up for people of color, specifically Black lives, it's okay to, within a safe space, to acknowledge that we're going to make mistakes as we go along. But as the old AIDS slogan back in the day would, the activists would scream, silence equals death. To not try to speak from the heart and do our best to communicate. I think we find ourselves, kind of killing whatever could be a beautiful thing in the future. And so as we slowly, wherever we are in the world, start to reemerge and start to gather again, my hope is that we will continue to have the difficult conversations and just listen and be okay with understanding we may put our foot in our mouth sometime, and that acknowledging our humanity and our vulnerability, and also listening with an empathetic ear and sharing our stories honestly and authentically. That's my hope, really.
That is our hope too. And that's why we started this podcast too, honestly. And it's only been
3 months.
3 months. Like we've always been about, and I know we've said this a number of times, pulling that freaking mask off of mostly of mental health, but mental health affects everybody, right? So
I think I like that you said that, because I think that it's first of all, I think it was one of those things people, you start talking about it and people are like, immediately they think it is a negative thing. Like, I don't have a mental health thing.
Yep.
But what I think part of when we use words like stigma and we think about how we have demonized certain words or certain experiences, such as folks who have different varied levels of mental health issues, to understand that you are not alone, that a lot of the people you love, care about, respect, admire, or put on a pedestal are probably going through the same things you are, is, I think, part of the steps we take to here in the States, where everything's like, oh, heal this country or bring us back together. That's how we do it, is by acknowledging our commonalities and our mutual experiences, and it makes us feel less alone.
Yeah, it does, for sure. And again, it's a human condition of wanting to be seen, heard, loved, accepted, that whole saying, and it's true. And I can even equate it in, not in a gushing way, but like, for example, to message someone like yourself and from a real, true, heart-centered intention to be received in that way and to be reciprocated, it does take two people. It's not just one way, and people can feel the way they feel, and they can pick that up. And I feel just so humbled and appreciative for that, and Rachel as well.
Oh yeah.
And what I want to say in that last statement is, again, like, thank you for being a role model to me and being a role model to so many people, and for everyone that you have worked with, that I have also had the privilege of seeing you alongside, that have been able to change the better for our generations that follow.
Well, you're welcome. And I think what's really cool is, I think oftentimes people see the work, but I think the cool things were, in hindsight, looking back now, to be in spaces that really didn't always welcome queer folks or queer stories, and having my presence kind of, like, for instance, I became the first man off reality TV to become series regular in an acting scripted show on network TV. And I starred opposite country star Reba McEntire and Lily Tomlin. The character was not written gay. The character was written urban, more of a hip hop, he worked at a hip hop label, and I remember thinking, I'm so wrong for this, and I'm going to just play him as close to how I read this without reading the description. And that was, in my mind, he is from New York. He's a little rough around the edges. You don't want to cross him, but he is funny and sassy. And it almost in some way really forced LGBTQ representation in a show that hadn't considered it. And there are these moments that it's almost like, it's like we get the opportunity to tell our own stories. And if you do so authentically, a lot of times you're educating people on your experience who didn't have any exposure to your experience prior. So you talking about mental health on this podcast, for some people, it's going to be the first time they've heard it framed via your experience with it. And if that's I think one of the best takeaways of Queer Eye was there was no set agenda. It was a subversive message of acceptance just by being authentic. And so as you share your experiences, we can't, argue with your experience of something, but we can learn and be educated about something that we might not have previously been exposed to.
Oh my gosh. My heart is so full right now.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I feel I'm almost getting a bit verklempt. Like I'm
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you reaching out. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, they basically reached out over the gram and they're like, I don't know if you want it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally down. I'm down. Let's do it.
Totally. Absolutely. No, it really made both of our days, and hopefully it contributed to yours in different ways. And yeah, again, I mean, might as well say it. If you're ever in Vancouver and you want to load.
Oh, no, I'm taking you up on that.
Yeah, please. Because I'm right around the corner. And again, I mean, probably a lot safer than staying in a hotel. Just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and also I'm not being boastful, but like, lot of space,
Ooh,
and a very beautiful view of construction in the park that should be done by the time you are allowed to travel here. So,
well,
I love it.
And now I'm going to plug the Okanagan, because honestly, we moved from Vancouver, my husband and I, a couple of years ago, just to be in a bit of a smaller town. But also, it's like I said, it's like wine country of Canada. It's fucking beautiful. So, yeah,
I love it.
You want to Google Vernon, BC, and just see, and you'll see what I mean. But anyway.
Listen, I'm just saying I'll have to do a Canadian tour and just like come visit everybody.
Exactly.
Please do. Your Canadian Jews are going to take good care of you. The Jews.
Listen, there's nothing better than a Canadian Jew.
Absolutely, darling.
Listen, I love you guys so much. I've drank a whole cup of coffee and now I'm fidgeting because I have to pee. So I'm going to go.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. I'll see you soon, okay? Stay safe out there.
Jay. Bye.
Okay,
Thank you. Bye.